Senator Iroegbu.
Good morning, Stanley.
Good morning, Senator.
Nice seeing you
It's
again.
good to see you too.
Yeah. Happy Easter.
Well, happy Easter to you too. And you know, as always, I cannot resist this joke. Are you jostling for the leadership of the Senate?
Oh, it's heating up, sir, and everybody is putting their hat on the table. So we have several candidates now, though narrowed down to
the two
three
that everyone is
three,
talking
yes,
about.
Yeah. So.
All right, well, interestingly enough, our first story comes from the Premium Times. And according to that story, which was published in the newspaper, President Muhammadu Buhari received the Emir of Qatar, that is Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, who was on a state visit to Nigeria. Now, the Qatari leader arrived the presidential villa right here in Abuja afternoon on Monday, and he was received by President Muhammadu Buhari at the forecourt of the presidential office. And interestingly enough, Qatar is the largest producer of liquefied natural gas in the world. Senator, you have to think about the bilateral relations between these two countries as you see all the stops being pulled there to receive the Emir of Qatar. And he is the first international leader to visit Nigeria since Buhari won the election. So I can think of a million things that Nigeria needs from Qatar, but my question would be, what does Qatar need from Nigeria? Perhaps that's the more important question.
Yes, it's... I will even ask more is Qatar, are they willing to kind of play a more mutual relationship with Nigeria? I know why they need Nigeria now, but you know we still have some problem with Nigerian visiting Qatar. There are some issues of how they scrutinize Nigerians, and try to get Qatari visa is a problem for Nigeria. There was a time they even blacklisted us, but now I'm sure they need us more than ever. You know, there's a geopolitics that is going on right now, and Africa seems to be the battleground. When the Qatari, I can understand, viewing from the geopolitics that is going on in the Middle East, with Qatar on one hand, with tacit support from Turkey and Iran, then the other Gulf neighbors, brothers, Saudi Arabia, like mentioned, UAE, Bahrain, and the other, Kuwait seems to be the only neutral actor in that area. So, and they are competing for space, vying for influence of kind of Islamic world, but it's beyond that. So that's why you see sometimes it even plays a dangerous game where there is a prosy war. Like if you see what is playing out in Libya currently, whereby Qatar is supporting one part, which is the UN-backed government in Tripoli. UAE and Saudi Arabia is backing the other side, the renegade leader, Haftar. You go to Sudan too, this current crisis, you still see undertone where Saudi Arabia is and the UAE is trying to back the new military, that why some of the protesters are saying no. So there's so it's playing out all around, even in Yemen. I also had in Djibouti, in several other places. So right now, Nigeria is a big player when it comes to especially sub-Saharan Africa.
But can Qatar count on Nigeria when you consider that Nigeria also does not want to get on the dark side of Saudi Arabia?
No, it's not really. Nigeria will always try to play a neutral role,
the middle ground,
non-aligned, but you still need that kind of. There's something that is called. It may not be financial, but have a kind of moral standing. Okay, don't be against us, but it may not be for us, but yeah, for all of us. So Qatar needs this kind of international acceptance, because from what you're seeing there, they've been isolated, and there's a concerted effort by Saudi Arabia to isolate them. And Saudi Arabia exerts so much influence in the Muslim world, you know. So And Qatar want to counter that. So even what played out in Syria and Iraq is going all over. So that's why you see Qatar want to reach out. They don't want to, before they feel they are comfortable, they have a goodly neighbors, they are well into themselves with US have their base there. Then they have when Saudi Arabia and other Gulf neighbors. But now they want to bypass that. They've seen that they need to chart their own course. So that's why Nigeria is one of the key in their geopolitical game. It's not as if they want Nigeria to be directly aligned against Saudi Arabia, but at least to see them, to be open to them whenever they need kind of that geopolitical playing field.
And it can be quite a tense situation between Qatar and Saudi Arabia, with Saudi Arabia accusing Qatar of sponsoring terrorism.
There's something that is called soft power.
Soft power.
Cultural diplomacy. I think that's what they will not go to have one. So all this kind of thing. A long run now, you see some cultural exchanges, maybe sponsorship of fellowship, students, all those kind of things. Cultural center. They'll be having Qatar Day, all those kind of things. It begin to create the subconsciousness of Qatar in Nigerian mind. So
this relationship is quite a young one.
It's a young. That's what I'm telling you.
Starting from 2010 was when the Qatari embassy was opened.
The Qatar doesn't. Ask Nigerian who tried to go to Qatar. It's difficult. It's difficult. Sometimes they are denied visa. I think for a long time we don't even have a direct flight somehow from Nigeria to Qatar. So I think I will check that, but there's a problem within that visa and flight issues with Qatar. So it wasn't an open space for Nigerians to go. But I'm sure now maybe things will change, but they will not be that because of crime issues and all those things.
Well, on the flip side, what Nigeria needs from Qatar, I mean, it's clear Nigeria can learn a lot from Qatar because Nigeria is a young player where the liquefied natural gas sector is concerned. Qatar is, you can be called the father of that particular industry because they actually invested in developing the technology that made it possible for natural gas to be cooled down and piped just the way petroleum is.
Still being flared.
Ours is still being flared. So Nigeria can gain a lot from whatever it is they can learn from Qatar, but that is provided they can diligently implement whatever it is that they can learn from this country.
That's what I'm saying. I'm sure Qatar to come, they have clear-cut goals why they are coming, why they are reaching out to Nigeria. And I'm sure based on their go-getting way of planning things, they will achieve it. But Nigeria, do we have clear-cut goals on how to get what we want from Qatar? Most times we have relationship with nations, but we don't have an end game in mind. It may be
this has always haunted our international policy.
Everywhere. Even there was a book I was reading recently, written by a retired Air Force general, that's a command, who fought in the Sierra Leone and Liberian War. You know, I was reading through to what these guys went through to just pay the supreme price. But have we in any way, what was our end game for going into those? Yes, when the one over is to achieve peace, but afterwards, what then? So there should be, Nigeria should be able to begin to articulate our foreign policy. Do we really, apart from those days of Obasanjo and Murtala Muhammad, Africa is the centerpiece of our foreign policy. Things have changed.
But this is rather broad when you say, because I've seen this many times, Africa is the centerpiece.
But
what does it even mean?
I'm just arriving, at least those days, you can pinpoint what they want to achieve by trying to liberate those African countries that are still under colonial rule. They played a role in many places, Mozambique, in apartheid South Africa, in Angola. You can see the result. They were pumping their money then, even though they claim they don't know what to do with the money then. But right now, the world have changed. You know, then there was this non-aligned movement, there was the Eastern Bloc, Western, but after the collapse of Soviet Union, then a lot of things have unfolded. But since then, have Nigeria been able to recalibrate its foreign policy and rearticulate it to actually what is Nigeria, what role are we playing in global, what is our foreign. Right now we don't know. Is anything goes. Whoever comes in, just play. We can't even articulate what is actually currently
ultimately how this relationship is going to benefit us.
So do we even review it? We don't review it.
Senator, you mentioned South Africa. And
it's
Nigeria invested a lot of human resources, financial resources to support
as I mentioned, Sierra Leone and Liberia.
Exactly. But how does this, and I can see how this has benefited the individual Nigerian businessman who travels from Nigeria to South Africa to set up a business. But it has not benefited the Nigerian economy because instead it has benefited the South African economy. Because the capital flight
is huge
in advantage of South Africa. When you look at the ShopRite
conglomerates
and all those conglomerates,
DSTV,
you have the DSTVs.
MTN,
so it's our wealth that's moving in the opposite direction after our investment in making them a free country. So it shows that we don't have an
and even the individual you're talking that benefiting from there, it's even their lives are not safe because at any slight act of violence, some of them are being killed. But South African businesses are well secured here, protected. And despite some of the way they seem to be too capitalist in nature or exploitative, how Nigerians see it with the DSTV pricing and MTN and so forth. But like you noted, it's not... Nigeria need to
mutually beneficial.
Yeah, mutually beneficial.
And I did a little research on our balance of trade with a lot of countries, especially developing and developed countries. And our balance of trade, Nigeria always comes out in the minus.
Yeah.
Our balance of trade with the EU, with China, with India. And when you take India, we spend about 360 billion every year receiving healthcare. We import so many things from there.
It's even worse if you even take, because most of things we have to export is actually oil. Despite that, we are in the negative. Now take away oil, which is a mono economy. It means that we are offering nothing. Do you understand? So the whole thing is dies, and the way the world economy is going now, the way not that the crude oil will still be very relevant for the next 100 years because
of the byproducts.
That's what I want to say. So, Beth, it will not be as lucrative as it is because check out their target, all this waste. They are the one who brought this to play now. They're the one who actually brought this crude oil. Up till now, we don't do indigenously. Do we even have the technology to drill? They still do this for us. So for them to start thinking now how to go a world beyond all the climate change, carbon, this thing you're talking about, is how to reduce dependence to more dependence. They can cut it down to, even if they try to cut it down to 60% or 50 or even 70% dependence, it's still it will take a huge hit still on us. Because now, we are even discovering more oil.
Yes, Ghana recently,
so
and
at the end, you find out that you have no much market to sell. Right now, we are no longer selling to our highest, biggest consumer, US. We are not even China. This thing now it's India.
India is our largest.
Yeah, over
and not
time,
because they increased their demand.
Yeah,
but because the US stopped buying.
That's what I'm saying. And there are many players. India discovered. So many other players are discovering. Israel discovered the other time. Lebanon. So many players are discovering. Countries are discovering oil, and creating alternative. So it calls for going back to what we talk about. What brought us how to harness the gas. What are we going to learn from this Qatar?
From Qatar. And I guess that is the biggest question. We'll move on to our next story. This one is coming from The Punch. The headline is election petitions rise to 766 as 77 tribunals are set for hearing. It's a fallout of our 2019 general elections.
So it's
the number of election petitions challenging various results of the 2019 general elections has risen from its 736 status as of April 4th to 766 the Court of Appeal headquarters in Abuja said on Tuesday. The Deputy Chief Registrar, Election Petition Tribunal, Court of Appeal, Mrs. Rabi Abdulaziz, says the new figure of 766 was the number of petitions filed as at April 16th. Now, she added that 77 election petition panels have been set up by the President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Zainab Bulkachua, to hear the matters. And the data realized by Abdulaziz, or released by Abdulaziz on Tuesday, showed that the number of presidential election petitions remained 4 in number, as it was in earlier summary of records made public on the 4th of April. The number of House of Representatives election disputes has also remained at 101, but the senatorial election petitions have increased by 2 from April 4th from about 205 to about 207 as at about April 16th. Now, the breakdown of the petitions filed so far as released by the Court of Appeal on Tuesday is as follows. House of Representatives elections 101, Senate elections 205, governorships 54, state houses of assembly 402, and presidential 4. Now, just to focus on the presidential elections, petitions were filed to challenge the victories of President Muhammadu Buhari and his party, the All Progressives Congress, on April the 23rd. And these include one filed on March the 18th by the People's Democratic Party and its candidate, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. And that was earlier this year. There was another one filed on the 7th of March by Hope Democratic Party and its national chairman and presidential candidate, Chief Ambrose Owuru. The other petition which was filed on the 19th of March by Pastor Aminchi Habu and his party, the People's Democratic Movement, and the fourth by Jeff Ojinika of the Coalition for Change, who both contended that the election was visited by substantial non-compliance with mandatory statutory provisions, which irregularity, which was substantial enough to affect the outcome of the elections. So in 2015, there was a lot of talk about the decrease in number of cases within court. 2019, these cases are going up. So what does that say? Is it because the election was keenly contested, or is it because there were so many irregularities?
It reflects the credibility of the election. Because when you compare 2015 to 2019 election, you can see in time of standard, 2015 was that shoulder above 2019. It's not as if 2015 was all that perfect, but it laid a marker which is expected that by 2019 it should kind of consolidated on what was achieved in 2015. But it seems as if there was a retrogression which is reflecting in these tribunals. This issue of inconclusive here and there violence and so many things, announcement of results under duress, or stopping people who are not returned from collecting their certificate or return. There are so many things.
There was also ballot box snatching.
Ballot box snatching, intimidation of voters, systemic disenfranchisement of voters, whereby election officials come very late, whereby people must have waited. That one happened a lot in the southeast and gone home, or people not even know where their polling units are. So there are a lot of things that happen within the election that made it not satisfactory. This is a reflection that people are not, the players, the contestants, even the electorates are not satisfied. It's not that it's totally bad, but there's a retrogression compared to what we had in 2015, and it reflected in what we're seeing.
In what's happening in the court cases.
Yes.
Okay, well, we'll move on from that to the outcome of the elections. This story is coming from The Nation. 3 governors, ministers in race for Buhari cabinet, which is something we've been talking a lot about. Now, ahead of the inauguration of President Muhammadu Buhari for his second term in office, the race for cabinet appointments has begun. The former military administrator, one former military administrator, 3 outgoing governors, and 15 ministers are jostling for cabinet seats. Now, these were indications. There were indications last night that the office of the secretary to the government of the federation may be zoned to the north central in favor of a Christian candidate. Besides, there was pressure on the president to revert to a 42-man cabinet structure as part of his pledge of inclusiveness. Now, the new structure will include the constitutionally recommended 36 ministers, 1 from each state of the federation, and 6 others representing each of the nation's geopolitical zones, if President Buhari embraces the idea. The president is yet to give commitment on the 42-man structure, the nation learned. And lobbyists, including governors and ministers, have been mounting pressure on influential citizens to put in a word for them. Women are also said to be demanding more ministerial jobs, including strategic ministries, and the pressure is said to have accounted for a recommendation of 42-man panel. So, Senator, do we do this to ourselves? Is it the desire to have more people into the cabinet that we overload ourselves with large government, and then at the end of the day we end up complaining that the government is too large, we're spending too much? Do we talk from both sides of our mouths as Nigerians?
That's what, yes, we talk both sides of our mouth, but just like in every society, there'll be discordant tones, there'll be competing interests. You know, when you're reading exactly this question you popped up was what was going on my mind, and I was laughing. I think it's no issue of reflecting representation. Yes, it's good to have inclusive. In fact, it's one of the core cardinal of democracy, inclusive governance.
But the Constitution has taken care of that. 36.
I'm coming. Yes, but that shouldn't be sacrificed on the altar of competence. And I want to advise the president. He has this second to, cement his legacy in gold if he wants to. Obasanjo's first time wasn't that necessarily fantastic, though there was foundation he was laying. But one of the most vibrant cabinet we ever had was his second term. And he brought players that were not even known by then.
Technocrats.
That's why I say Buhari should not turn. He didn't get it right, all that right in the district. He should not worsen it by trying to turn. When I have former governor, I said this shouldn't serve as a retirement. Cabinet is not a place for a retirement platform for political lobbyists and past governors or whatever, of politicians. He should look for people, competent hands. That's one. And those competent hands are found in all parts of this country. We have brilliant guys from all parts of the country. You can make inclusive governance, still get the best. Don't just go and look for all politicians. Yes, there are various ways you can compensate. They are chairman of board of priorities and all those areas. You can do, but I want to, if you really, for the sake of Nigerians, you should actually look for the best. Not bad that you feel it's only people from one part of the country that only you say I'm pointing them based on merit. You can achieve both. I tell you, there's no state in this country that cannot find egghead, brilliant minds. So you can achieve inclusiveness and still competence. But what I want, he should avoid all these discordant tones. This is his government. He's not seeking for re-election. In fact, he can call anybody bullshit and get away with it, and that's why second term is dies, and that's why people first time you can forgive a lot of this thing because you want to please. Obasanjo did it. Jonathan did it, thinking he could get second term and correct some things. Buhari is lucky enough to have it now. He shouldn't ruin it by all this pride demand from here and there. Yes, I'm not kind of say people interest should not make their interest known, but it's and that's why leadership, they say box stops on your table. All this one, they're always making excuses. The president don't know. They find a minister to blame. They find National Assembly. That's not governance. It's you. If your subordinates make mistake, you bear the responsibility because you are paid to hire as much PAs, so many essays, so many essay, so and state pay for that. And that's why, because at the end, whose administration? They call it Buhari administration. So it's not Abba Kyari's administration, it's not SGF administration, it's not this thing. So it's what all those appointees achieve is what will define your legacy.
It's what reflects on
It's
the
what
president
reflects.
himself.
So
Okay, well, that's the last story we'll be looking at in our press review. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll go on to talk about security. There's been lots of cases of violence in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The most recent, or one of the most recent, happening in Kaduna State, where a castle resort was attacked. 2 people killed, 3 others kidnapped. The Minister of Foreign Affairs has condemned the incident, and this raises the question whether violence is affecting the tourism industry in the Federal Republic of Nigeria.